Go for it.
So I want to just recap a little bit. So this is our 4th week together, just to give you an idea of where we were. We tried to lay some foundations for you to start with. So the first thing that we talked about in our first time together was this good relationship that you're going to have with your spouse is based on 2 powerful people, which means I know that I have been heard. I know that I am valued in the relationship. I know that I am on equal footing with my spouse. We're powerful in that we have a voice, that we can speak our needs, our concerns, and our wants. And then we
our dreams
and vision and all of that. And we talked about one very important quote: good relationships.
Good relationships are not defined by the absence of conflict. They're defined by the willingness to work through any conflict. That's a good line right there.
That's a good word. Good commitment. We talked about intentionality and the importance of being intentional, that marriage does not just happen. You don't just say I do on that day and it just puts everything in motion, and the little birds and roses, petals, we talked about all of that. That's not the way it is. Like, you have to every day with the same fervor that you said it on that wedding day is what you have to take into every day of your marriage, because every day we say I do to each other. Intentionality is really, really important.
Can I say something about that? I'm sorry. I'm just going to go off a little bit here. But when Vicki said that, it just triggered a thought in my mind. And so I'm going to wax theological for about 2.5 minutes here. And it has to do with intentionality. But I believe everything on the planet now, from God's perspective, is going to unfold with intentionality on the part of his people. And this idea that things are just going to happen without our partnering with God to see them happen is actually it's just like almost an old religious mindset that we'll just pray and it'll magically happen. And I was thinking about how, I love creation. God's creation is beautiful. It's one of the things, it's one of my fallback points in my relationship with God. Like, I can always look at creation and go, oh, there's a God. Look at this beautiful creation. We live out here. Yosemite is not far from here. Ansel Adams, just like capturing God's creation. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? The old black and white photos of Yosemite. It's just the Grand Canyon, and on and on and on. I mean, God's creation is beautiful. But the thing that God did after he created everything was, the first thing he did after he created everything was he planted a garden. And that messes with my mind a little bit, because I think creation is already spectacular. Like, it's gorgeous. And God said, yeah, it's gorgeous. And there's everything you're going to need to be successful right here in everything I created. Now watch this. I'm going to take it to another level. And it, for me, is showing us that it's on us to plant the gardens. It's on us to build the buildings. It's on us to create the culture. It's on us to create the relationships. Is he going to help us? Yes. I mean, he is. I feel like does God answer prayer? Like, I tell you, the quickest answers to prayer for me always come in this relationship or my family. They are like, oh my gosh, he shows up quickly when I cry out. So he's here to help, but he's not going to hammer the boards together himself. And I think that's what Vicki's talking about. Relationships are not going to just hammer themselves together, hang the drywall. Woo, we prayed and got, and then, hey, the drywall got hung in the walls of our relationship. This doesn't work that way. He's saying you can plant a garden and it's on you. it's on you. And I think we talked a while ago about being cultural architects. And I really believe that we create the culture of our families. We create the culture of this marriage. And I don't think God's going to do it for me. He is absolutely going to help me. He 100%, I mean, you heard me give testimony. Remember the hand on the doorknob. He is absolutely going to help me, but he's not going to do it for me. It's on me. It's on Vicki, and it's on Carl and Vicki to create this relationship. And that's intentionality. That's if I take a step like out of the boat like Peter, he will show up. Like he'll give me solid footing, but he's not going to push me out of the boat either. He's not going to make me do anything. And in this relationship, it feels like when I make the slightest move toward Vicki, he's there to help. And Vicki is there to respond. But he doesn't make me do it. It's on me. This is why I'm not a determinist. I really believe in free will. Like I believe that he honors our choice. Choose today who you will serve. Like I believe God is the God of choice. So all that to say, intentionality in this relationship is huge, number one. And number two, when we are intentional with one another, he absolutely empowers. He absolutely shows up. That's a good word.
That was a good word. So we talked about intentionality. That was our second week. And there was one thing about intentionality that we didn't mention. And part of it is because my two daughters are on this call. But I'm going to go ahead and trust that they will be okay with it. In our relationship, we felt it was necessary for us to be as intentional about our intimacy as we were about dinner, right? So we planned what we were going to have for dinner most of the time. We do not do that anymore, the dinner plans, but we would plan what we were going to have for dinner to the point that we would actually build our grocery list based on what we were going to have for dinner. It had thought. It had intentionality with it. And so we walked through a really rough time with intimacy. Carl mentioned that in one of our sessions because I have some abuse in my background. And so for me, intimacy was something I had to heal up from and be able to be intimate in a real healthy way with Carl. And so we had it was probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, struggles in our marriage throughout. So at some point after I was on my healing journey, we agreed that we were going to have sex nights. Like we were going to intentionally put on the calendar sex nights.
I love sex night, by the way.
Doesn't that sound romantic?
Woohoo.
You know, I know that it might not sound romantic, but I will tell you there's intentionality in that. So that means you're going to prepare, you're going to build up. There might be some more flirting the day of sex night. There might be other things involved in preparing for sex night. And so intentionality for us means that we are going to make sure that we are thinking about every aspect of this relationship, including our physical relationship. And just so you know, we still have, well, should I say that? I've already said it now, I guess. We still have intentional sex nights, okay? We're not too old yet, so sorry, girls. So intentionality is a big deal.
I think it's more our sons-in-law that are like, oh, can't get that picture out of my mind right now. Sorry.
But it's important because here's what will happen. This is why these are really important. You will have gone to work. You will have spent time with the kids. You will have gone to school. You will have run errands. You will have done all of these things. It's the end of the night. You sat down and watched TV together and you're spent and you don't have anything left for this intimate time that, by the way, you are the only other person that's going to experience this with your spouse, right? It's that intimate time. You don't get to, call somebody else up and, say, hey, let's have sex. I mean, if you're doing that, we need to have another conversation. But this is why it's super intentional and why it can't get the leftovers. Like, you can't give this very physical, intimate, and I'm going to say holy time as leftovers. Like, you can't. There's got to be intentionality in that. And I wanted to make sure we mentioned that because we kind of skipped over it in the call. Happy to take questions about that if you want, but it's very, very important. It is very important.
Yeah. And it was the part of the challenge for me, I would say, is knowing Vicki's history. Like, I knew that she was working through things. Like, I got it. I'm a pastor. It's like, oh my gosh, she's working through a bunch right now. This, like, you don't have to be Dr. Phil to put, she's struggling with intimacy. For her, it's just like, you just want this, you just want something from me. You just want to take. And of course I'm like, no. I'm go all Chandler being, no. Like, that wasn't it at all. I needed to be close to my wife. What in the journey, what began to turn the tide, I think, was when I was able to be really honest about what I needed. And it does go back to that. And that's actually a very powerful position. One of the questions came up early in I think the very first talk we had was on feeling powerful. And one of the indicators of being powerful, and we're saying this partly, it's part the point we're talking about, but partly review. And that is like, when you can say what you need without the fear of being punished. That's actually a powerful position. When you can from a, what's that?
Or rejection.
Or rejection. Yeah. Yes. Or rejection. Punishment or rejection. I'm saying what I need, knowing that she could punish me with what she's about to hear, or she could reject me and not meet my need. But I know this about her. I know she wants to meet my needs. And so a powerful person can actually say, hey, this is actually something I need. And it feels a little weird. It feels a little weird to give language to it, but I need this. And one of the cool things that happened, like, I would say that was one of the, it's like primal, kind of need, but what we began to experience afterward, I would say, was the ability to communicate what we needed in other ways, what we needed emotionally, or what we needed spiritually. And that's a powerful thing too. Hey, I don't feel like you're listening to me, and I need to feel like you take the time to hear me. That's a powerful thing to say. A lot of times the way, and we mentioned this last week, the way you end an argument is like, tell me what you needed in that moment that you didn't get from me. Just put it into a sentence. Give me language, help me understand why that thing went so sideways. Tell me what you needed that I didn't give you. And we'll do that in a reciprocal way, but it's very powerful and very intentional, I would say, to hear what one another need.
Yeah. So just to end with that, your spouse should never get the leftovers, right? They should always be the interaction that you have with your spouse should be very intentional.
Number one.
They should be number one. So that's Selah. We'll end with that one. Then last week we talked about our rules of engagement and the importance of having an emergency break and the importance of fighting fair. No one has to respond, but if someone would like to, was there any opportunity to create a rule of engagement this week? Or did you talk about it? Is anybody, your Geneva Convention? Yeah, did anyone have that opportunity, or would they like to share anything about that? You don't have to, but this is a pretty safe place. So tonight, Amanda, I think, sent out, and I don't know how she got it, but anyway, we got some information about some topics that you were interested in us discussing. And so we're just going to kind of go through these randomly. And then I'd like to take the last little bit of time to, for sure, bless you and pray over you. And but I think what we'd like to talk about first is trust, because trust is part of that foundational piece. And so if you are not in a trust relationship, it's really hard sometimes, right, to be vulnerable, to be able to be raw and real. And so we're going to talk a little bit about trust.
That was my cue. I don't know if you caught that. That was my cue. So a group of us, Sarah and Melody will remember this, a group of us from North Carolina went to Zambia. We went to Africa a couple of years in a row back in the, I'd say
mid-80s?
Yeah, the mid-90s. Yeah, we were there. Yes. And it was actually really kind of beautiful. We were way up in the bush. I mean, miles from any civilization. Just adventures in Africa. Selah. But we were at this I guess it was kind of like a missions base, a training base that they had in Zambia, and we were teaching on relationships. And one of us, the Americans from the team, was teaching, and we had a translator who was translating, English into Lunda. That's the native kind of dialect in this part of Northwest Zambia. Anyway, so he was talking on trust, and he made the statement that, trust is really fragile. Trust is really, he makes the statement in his teaching, and he's waiting for the translator to pick up. Well, in the Lunda language, in the Lunda dialect, there is no word for fragile. And so it was like a moment. You could feel like the lag there where the translator had to, on the fly, come up with a word that would communicate fragile or fragility. And so this guy was brilliant. I mean, this guy was really smart. He spoke like 7 languages, like way smarter than most of us. Anyway, on the fly, he said, trust is it's like an eggshell, and it can be easily broken. And we were like, oh, there it is. That's really beautiful. And we carry that in our hearts all the time, that we hold this really kind of fragile thing with one another. Now, this is just an analogy, and if you have a better one, you're free to use yours. And every analogy, by the way, breaks down after a while. But we hold it like this is a fragile thing that I really want to protect. This trust thing between Carl and Vicki. It's easy. It could be easily cracked. It can be easily cracked. Now, the good news is, and this is where it breaks down a little bit, is that trust is always rebuildable. It's always rebuildable. But I know that in a moment I could trash it with Vicki. And that is something that I carry in my head and in my heart, that I don't want to break trust with this human being.
So that's really important. And so I think we mentioned this, maybe we didn't, but sometimes people believe that trust and forgiveness are the same thing. And they actually are not. They are two different things. Forgiveness will eat you alive. Unforgiveness, rather, will eat you alive. We are commanded in Scripture to forgive. There's not like, you got to do it. Like, it's just the way it is. You have to do it. And Jesus made the way for us, right? So that we would know how to walk in forgiveness. Trust is a different thing, and they're intertwined. Trust and forgiveness. I think you have to be able to forgive with your heart before you can actually begin to trust again when that trust has been broken. But it's so important, if you've had a break in trust, to begin to that coming back together and to start small and to rebuild and to know that to be a person of your word. Don't make promises that you can't keep that will cause that trust to be broken again, right? It's like you just start small. This other person is more likely is wanting to trust you but there's fear involved. They don't want to get hurt again. That wound is open and gaping maybe. And, we're starting to heal it back up. And so I want to say, be kind to yourselves as you're rebuilding trust. But the importance of rebuilding trust is huge, which is why I think you start small. You start small and like that. Yep, got it. And then you're going to be able to open up your heart more and more and more to trust in those bigger things. You've got to talk about it. You've got to be vulnerable and raw. You've got to be able to say, I just don't trust you in this. And then hopefully the other person is going to say, what can I do to rebuild trust with you?
Yeah.
And again, don't say you're going to do something that you cannot do. It's a bad plan. It's a very bad plan. But this is where that vulnerability and that rawness comes in. You guys, relationships are hard. They're beautiful and they are wonderful. I think, our relationship with God is beautiful and wonderful, but we all know it isn't always easy, but it's worth it. It is really worth it. And, I don't know if you read the Psalms and you listen to David, and David, he gets ticked off at God. God has disappointed him. He feels a lack of trust toward God sometimes. And he's saying, how long, oh God? Like yelling at him. How long, oh God, are you going to do this? Or how long, oh God, are you going to do that? Like that's that vulnerability of heart where we can say to our spouse, like, what the heck, right? And then the spouse is going to say, what do you need? What can I do? How can I rebuild trust in your life? And that just means I value you. I want to be connected with you. What does that look like for me? And you start with very doable things. Once you have trust, some of these other things, I think, begin to fall in place. It's really hard for two people to walk as two powerful people if they're not trusting each other.
Yeah. That's really good. That's Psalm 13, by the way, if you're taking notes. How long, O Lord? And I love that psalm too. What happens is if I don't feel like I can trust Vicki, I am going to begin to self-protect, right? Again, don't have to be Dr. Phil to get this. If I can't trust, if she's not going to protect me, well, then I'm going to have to protect myself. And that is a picture of separation. That is a picture of two people who are now self-protecting. I can't trust her. She'll hurt me. And whatever the thing was that happened, maybe I got talked about behind my back, whatever it was, maybe a need wasn't met, but all of a sudden like, oh, I can't trust you to meet my need. I can't trust you to protect me. I can't trust that you'll do what you say. I can't trust that you'll do what I ask. I can't trust you with my feelings. I can't even trust you with my kind of vision, with my dreams. So it's a huge thing to not give in to distrust. Because what has to happen is we are constantly going to force ourselves into one another. And the rebuilding of trust looks like that to me. It looks like I'm scared right now because you kind of hurt me. And that's weird for, I think, a man to say, but guys, if we're honest, we can admit like, yeah, that thing that did or happened or it didn't happen, that actually hurt me. And sometimes anger is a response to that hurt. So we're going to constantly force ourselves into one another. And that's, to me, what rebuilding trust looks like. And I love what Vicki said, because it's like, tell me what I stepped on your toes. Tell me what you need. Tell me how that happened. We are going to step on one another's toes. But I can tell you this, if I continually step on Vicki's toes, it's going to build mistrust. She is not going to trust me any longer. So it's vital that she's able to say, hey, dude, we got to talk, because this is a powerful person. look at my toes, man. And that's you. You did that. You did that. And again, you step on someone's toes and they might walk down the road with you for a little while, but it won't be close. They'll be like, no, I'm going to walk down the road with you, but I'm going to be way over there. I can love you from here. And by here, I mean way over there, because I can't trust my toes to you. You've been stomping on them.
I think that's really important. These are good things for when there's trust that has happened between the relationship. What happens though when you've been abused or mistreated or something like that in a previous relationship? Me, for example. And so Carl would tell me things like, Vicki, you are so beautiful. And I would be like, oh,
trigger.
I cannot trust you because you don't really think I'm beautiful. You really want something from me. So
but look at her. Oh my gosh.
Stop. So sometimes when we come into a relationship, we bring in some baggage from previous relationships. And I just want to, we live in a world that unfortunately, we all aren't always treated really well. Sometimes the mistrust that we bring into a relationship isn't because of the other person. It's because of crap that was inflicted upon us, or there can be any number of reasons why we have this mistrust. You could have come from divorced parents, and maybe that's an area of mistrust for you. You could have experienced abuse like I did. You could have come from an alcoholic parent like I did. You could have come, there are many things that could have caused it. And here's what I want to say to you. I so wish I was standing in front of you right now, because I would just tell you that your inner healing is so necessary and so available. It is so available. There is this wonderful Holy Spirit that wants to bring you into a place of wholeness. Jesus died on the cross. His body was broken so that our bodies could be whole. So I just want to encourage any of you that have been in a place of that I talked about. It's a tragedy that 3 in 5 people, used to be women, now it's people. 3 in 5 people have been sexually abused in the United States. 3 out of 5. It's a tragedy that these kinds of things have happened, but it is a reality. And here's what I want to tell you. As a child of the King, the child of the Creator, He's made a way for us to walk in wholeness. So I would encourage you to seek out healing if that is you. It was a long journey for me, and a lot of it was because of shame. A lot of it was because I'm a good Christian. Oh my gosh, I'm even a pastor's wife. I can't have this issue. I can't have this problem. I'm going to have to just figure this out. And it wasn't until I was able to talk about it and bring it out and walk through and have other people in my life walk through that I was able to build trust. Like, I had to ask the hard question of, where were you, Jesus? When this was happening to me, where were you, Jesus? There was that trust, right? So I had to work through all of that. I worked through it with my husband. And the good part and the end of the story is that we worked it through. I have victory. I can sit here before you and tell you that I am whole, that I have been healed on the inside. So I encourage you to seek that healing, whatever way God leads you to. I know there are people around you. Feel free to get my email address from Melody. If any of you want to talk about that road of inner healing, I'm happy to be a part of that. But sometimes that's what we bring into our our marriage relationship. And that's where we've got to kind of dig deep. You got to be vulnerable. You have to seek out that healing to be able to trust this person that you have committed yourself to for the long haul.
Yeah, that's really good. I just want to say too that I think resources now are so much more available than they were when Vicki was walking through it. And I'm super thankful for counselors and psychologists, and they're just really good at helping people work on. And so it's everywhere. You can get help. And the thing that is kind of in the shadows can get brought into the light, and healing can come. So we have a great kind of end of the story there.
Okay, so I think one of the next things we want to talk about is the growing individually and together.
Okay.
So that was on quite a few of your core values and your mission statements of the importance of growing individually and together. And I think Carl and I told you this in the very beginning. We aren't really good with formulas like step 1, step 2, step 3. What we want is for you guys to meet together, to come together, and to find out ways that you are able to do to be able to grow individually. I think the one thing that I can say about it is I do believe that when you are encouraged to, we are two individual people, but, as one in this married life that we have, that it's so important that we are growing. And I think oftentimes the concern is that if I'm growing and he's not growing, then are we going to grow apart? And this is when there has to be, again, intentionality and growing toward one another, agreement of this thing of how do we grow and how do we grow together. I can tell you as a young married, and in the time that we were married, it really wasn't about my growth. It was about Carl's growth. And I just got to be a part of his growth. And that's not the way it is anymore. Thank God. And it should have never been that way. But again, we were in a culture that really, that was the way that it was. And my growth was supposed to be, cooking dinner. I'm happy. Like, I'm not saying that that's bad. That just, I think I said earlier, I'm not Susie Homemaker. So for me to grow in that way was stifling for me. But we were in a culture where I didn't feel like I could say that. So I think that it's important that you're able to grow your in your interests and grow each other, because you're going to be fulfilled in that. Then you can turn, and then when you're growing together, you're bringing the whole, you're bringing the all of you, the greater you, if you will, the more, the best, the new and improved, or whatever you want to call it. But there's been growth there in you, right? Which means you now bring growth to the marriage. And so I think it happens, nothing happens automatically, but what I believe happens is when we are growing individually, it does mean that the marriage is growing corporately.
Yeah, that's good. I saw a documentary last night on Motown Records on Showtime. Motown Records. It was awesome. And Barry Gordy of Motown Records. Some of you are like, is that even what is he talking about? Yeah, it's old school, like Temptations, like the Four Tops. I mean, all these Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, like all these great artists came out of Detroit, Michigan, and Motown in the late 50s and early 60s. Anyway, Barry Gordy, the president of Motown, had a statement. They said, you're either going to innovate or you're going to stagnate. And I was like, oh, that's really good. You either innovate or stagnate. And I think that's what we're talking about here. What does it look like to grow as an individual, and what is it to grow as a couple? I love what Vicki said, because as I grow as an individual, I actually do bring this to this relationship because we are turned to one another. This is another one of my 2-minute kind of theological just moments to throw down here. But I would sum up my relationship with God this way. He is always revealing to me who he is and also who I am. That's a good word, right? I should write that down. He's always revealing to me who he is. Like, it's not, I'd love to say just boom, it just comes in one, massive download, but that's not how it happens. It's a journey. I love Hebrews 10:14. It says, for by one offering, he perfected forever those who are being sanctified. And I love that because it's perfected by one offering, Jesus on the cross. He perfected forever. It's done. Tetelestai, it's finished. It's complete. You can't be added to. It can't be taken away from. It's finished. For by one offering, he perfected forever those who are being sanctified, those who are in process. And I love that. And that's what I'm talking about. He is in a process. You and I are in a process. He's always showing me who he is. And that is an unfolding. And I trust that will carry on for all time in eternity. Like, not just even here on earth, but I think that's a part of the ongoing deal. He's always revealing who he is. But this is the kind of like little bonus feature. He's always revealing who I am and why I am and what I'm about and why I'm made the way I am and why that thing means something to me. And it is also an unfolding. And I can tell you this, in my life, the person that he has chosen more than any other to partner with him in the unfolding of who I am is her. Like, he uses her to show me. And I would say my kids next, my children next. But I learn who I am from God the most from this one right here. Like, I'm forced to give language to why I feel this way because I'm in relationship with her. If I was on a desert island, like, I don't know how it would, like, even if I'm Tom Hanks, I don't know how it's going to work with me all alone on an island. Wilson's just not going to give me the feedback that I need to really understand who I am. But I'm with her. And I have to share. I have to give language. I have to express. And this is the work part that we talk about. It's like, it's not artificial. It's real. Tell me why that bothered you. It's like, and all of a sudden I hear myself saying something that I didn't even know was in there. And it's like, oh, there it is. And God's going, there you go. There you are. You see? Look at that. This is a need that you have. This is how I made you. This is how I designed you. And it's a beautiful process. So I love this question. In my growth this way, it's almost hard to distinguish this way, the vertical from the horizontal. And I love that God designs us that way, that we really do need one another. Your call.
Any questions? You guys are quiet.
You guys are so quiet tonight. But okay.
Nope. Okay. What are you going to hit next? Okay. Go.
The question came up. What about dealing with in-laws? And I've got 2 sons-in-law on this call, so I don't know which of you. No, I'm just kidding. I know. I know you didn't write that down. Children obey your parents, right? You're not a child anymore. But what we always do is we honor our mother and father. And so we grow our children, actually our children. Like my kids don't obey me anymore. They don't have to. Now, I would hope for them that they would honor, just because that's a good thing. And it actually carries a promise with it. And that's Old and New Testament, by the way. So carrying a place of honor is something that always has to be in our hearts toward our parents. Amen, Selah. Here's what else is true. I'm not in a covenant relationship with my parents. I am with her, though. And so while in a place of honor, I can hear, I can even value, I can factor in other opinions, including my parents or Vicky's parents. You know, our parents are not on the planet anymore. You know, they are with Jesus. So, and that does, there's a whole thing with that too, by the way. But here's the point. It's you two. It's what you guys decide. Do you take in other perspectives? Do you receive wise counsel from others? Of course you do. Sure. I mean, like you should from, you know, I mean, if you're going to have a picnic, you're going to seek counsel from, you know, the Weather Channel as to whether there's a good idea, because a hurricane just kind of blew through our area. You're going to seek counsel for things, but it's what you two decide. And so for us, and we talked about this, remember we talked about kids. Well, in-laws can come in between here too. And my loyalty is never to my parents. My loyalty is to her. And her loyalty is to me. And, you know, frankly, there have been times where we both had to say, hey, look, you know, we love you and we value you, but Vicki and I decided this is what we're going to do. And we'll keep you posted. And we're not, you know, it's one thing to have like a rebellious knee-jerk reaction to control. And side note about that, you know, when people break out of control, it's not always pretty. Sometimes you're throwing elbows to break out of being controlled from parents, from, you know, any kind of controlling, manipulative situation. You get back into a corner and I'm not my prettiest. I'm not at my best when I feel backed into a corner where I'm feeling controlled and manipulated. I'm going to throw elbows. I'm going to scratch and claw my way out of that controlling situation. And so I'm not saying that we've always done it perfectly, but the reality is none of us like to feel controlled. None of us do. And there comes that point where input is welcome, control though isn't. And how you say that, how you communicate it, that's between the two of you. It never felt super heavy for us. We just said, hey, this is what Carl and Vicki think. And so once again, it forces you together. It forces you to be so intentional about being together that we're not going to let any wedge come in here. We're not going to let any disagreement. We don't want to be unkind to our dear parents. At the same time, we're not going to, what we decide is going to be the final word.
Yeah. Sometimes that first or second or third interaction, when you're telling like your parents or your in-laws, right, that, hey, this is a decision that Carl and I have made, it can be rough, like it's stark a little bit. It was rough for my parents. I remember, I mean, I can actually remember the incident. It was over an air filter and just really ridiculous. I know it was ridiculous, but it was, you know, my dad's, well, I'll just tell you, my dad was a mechanic, right? And he said something about, you know, why doesn't Carl just fix the air filters? I don't remember, something like that, but it was about this air filter. And something rose up in me where I was like, oh, this is not this, you're trying to do this, like you're trying to wedge by, you know, questioning my husband. And it was like, yeah, no, we're done. Dad, you know, Dad, I love you. But Carl and I'll take care of it. You know, it was, and there had been several of those, the way that we were raising our kids, they thought we were really, really strict. And so we kind of heard that a little bit. And but it was always whenever it's anything, in-laws, your children, like we talked about that, these are people that love you. If you're in a good relationship with your parents and your in-laws, I mean, it's like you love them, you don't want to hurt them, but you really have to guard this relationship. You really cannot let anything come in between here, because remember, you said like forever here. So you're with this person. So you cannot let something come in between. Even those beautiful children that they will try to wiggle their way in between. Like, you got to stay locked together. In-laws, people, in-laws who are like, so when are we going to have kids? When are you going to have kids? When are you going to make me a grandparent? Aren't you going to have like 8 or 12 kids? And when is that going to happen? And they aren't allowed in your bedroom. I don't know how, like, without like examples, I don't know how to speak into that, except to say, and we've done lots of counseling with situations where in-laws have been an issue. And I think the biggest thing is that when you feel that coming in between, like, you just get more solid. I mean, it's that pressure. Like, you pull in, and with honor and respect, it's like, we love you, but we have to do this. And by the way, we have to live with the decision. You don't. We do. And so thank you. We love you, but we're together in this, and this is how we're going to move forward. And I can tell you, it's hard sometimes.
But I do think in our life anyway, our experience is that both sets of parents they heard us. It might have taken a couple of times. It might have been, here's what we think. And by the way, we is powerful. Mm-hmm. Here's what we're going to do. This is what we are going to do. We is powerful. And it's almost like there's almost I'd say an authority from God. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that works with your theology or not, but like when I say, here's what we are going to do, it carries some weight, I think, from heaven. Like, again, you can do whatever you want with that, but I have found it to be really powerful. Wherever 2 or more of you agree as to touching a thing, and she and I agreed as to what our next course of action was going to be, small things and big things. Here's what Carl and Vicki are going to do. And it felt like, whether it was with, the in-laws or with our own children, hey guys, here's what we're going to do. And maybe just vote and voice. Maybe we just say that. How about that? Did you not want to get off on that, or?
Whatever.
Okay.
I want to just say one thing about in-laws.
Yes.
I just want to say one other thing about in-laws that I think is important. If you've had an argument and it's serious, I think I want to caution you about going and talking to your parent about your spouse.
That's really good.
Because you will come back, you will forgive that spouse and they love them, but your parent is going to keep that little thing back there. They hurt my kid. They did this to my kid. And it's one thing to go and ask for advice, or whatever, or input, but just be careful that you're not ragging on your spouse to your parent, because it will cause it causes stuff. We've learned, not that our kids have anything bad to say about their spouses ever, but we will try always, when we hear possibly anything like that, is to point them back to their spouse. Or if we're counseling a couple who is going and talking, we're going to always point them back to their spouse. You don't want, building sides is not a good plan. And in-laws and parents love that, they like that. Not these parents, but some parents really like that. So that's just a caution when it comes to in-laws and parents, is to just make sure that you're guarding this.
Yeah.
Like you're just guarding. You're guarding.
Yeah, and to pull it back around, I mean, that breaks trust. If Vicki's going to talk
Mhm.
to her parents about me, she just broke trust with me. Like she talked about me behind my back. And oh my gosh, that feels like such a betrayal because we want to pull together. Is there a time to seek counsel? Of course. But even then, it should be like, hey, I think we need to talk to someone. Or are you okay if I talk to this person? Like, how do you feel? Here's what I think. What do you think? That's two people coming together, making a decision about what you're going to do. But I'm going to tell you something. Like I don't talk about Vicki behind her back. I brag on her. I do that. I don't mind doing that. She gets a little like shy about that. And to take again, I'm trying to sew some things up here and go full circle. But I don't like talking about anyone behind their back because I don't talk about her behind her back. But I really love talking about the amazing things about people behind their back. Now that I'm really okay with doing. And I'm a pastor and I do it all the time. I do it all the time. I will look for an excuse to talk about someone behind their back in a way that builds them up, in a way that highlights them, in a way that pushes them up. But here's what I think. I think God is always looking for an excuse to talk about me behind my back. I believe this, guys. I believe he's always looking for an excuse not to squash Carl, but to promote me. That's the God we serve. And I just want to partner with that. I want to partner with that kind of heart that says, can I tell you hey, if you got 2 minutes, let me just tell you about this person. Let me just tell you about one of my kids. Have you got a minute? Look at this quilt that my daughter put on Instagram today. Like, have you, my son-in-law, did I tell you about the promotion? Oh my gosh. Come here. Let me just tell you about this thing. I'm going to look for an excuse to highlight the people in my life. And that's a good life. And that's a good life right there. I'm not going to partner with the bull crap that's out there to separate and divide. Remember, Diablo, the divider, the devil, like, I don't want to partner with that. I want to partner with the uniter who is always looking for an excuse to promote me. Always looking. Come on, that's my boy down there. Did you see what he did? He did the dishes. He didn't even have to, he wasn't even asked. He folded his wife's underwear. And for me, that's like maybe the biggest, oh my gosh, like, the Holy Spirit is fallen when I fold Vicki's underwear because it's like, oh, that's maybe the hardest thing on the planet for me. I'll clean the toilet, but folding underwear is like, no.
We only have 15.
Okay.
So I don't even know what just happened.
We just got off on underwear. Sorry.
Yeah, I got off on underwear. But that's kind of how we feel about in-laws and other things. We've got about 15 minutes left. And so are there any questions? I think we hit not everything, but maybe most everything.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. But if you have any questions, we can try and answer them. We'll leave a little time for that. And then I have a couple things to share, and I think we'll go from there. Any questions on anything?
What are some other common things that you've noticed through all your years of counseling and marriage that come between people? So like in-laws being one thing, I imagine work being another thing, but like what are some other things that, we can be looking out for?
Ministry.
What?
Yeah. In fact, we were with a couple, just a couple of friends of ours here in Reading, and they were, I think Jerry was a worship leader, was he? Anyway, he was on staff at a church, and in that particular church, your job came before your family. And that is just like so, like that ministry is like this. Now, The senior pastor needed to like make it clear, now, this is your job. It comes before family. I don't want to hear your kid has a t-ball game, like, or whatever. Like this comes first. And, of course you got to work out t-ball games and soccer games. I get that. I mean, yeah, you have to be practical and creative about how to manage all that and balance it. We get that. But for us, we never wanted ministry to come first. I mean, we would say this is our ministry. This is what this is all about. That is just an overflow. That's an expression. That's just a reflection of this.
So we like to say that when you get married, like you and your spouse, that's church, right? The two of you just created a church right there. And when you have children, those are the members. You just added members to your congregation. So that little unit is first. It is first. And serving, honestly, we did try to include our kids with our ministry. Wasn't always possible, but we tried. And so I think that ministry can oftentimes, or even like in the name of God, I'm doing this for God, so therefore I hope you guys make it. Like, so ministry is a really big one that can easily come in between. And that's, again, you have to guard it. Yeah. You have to guard the relationship. And remember, your first church is your family. Yeah. All of you guys have a church. You all have a church.
And we made some kind of radical moves in our life that affected our kids. Like, no doubt. But even in that, when we were living at a base, I mean, that's going to change your life. But even then, it was really important to us that we maintain like an autonomous family unit. We ate our meals usually together with a big group of people, and there were challenges associated with that. But our kids still came first. They still came first.
Yeah, we tried anyway, if we did.
Yeah.
I think another thing that can come in between is finances. Like, finances is something that can come in between a couple. The abundance of or the lack of, right, can come in between and try to divide. Just, it's a thing, right? So just be careful. That's really important that you're in agreement about how you're going to spend your money, right? Because being not in agreement about that can cause a division. So we talked about kids.
Vicki's an accountant. I mean, she's really good with numbers. Way better than I am. Way quicker. I mean, she sits down to pay bills now, and it's all online, and she's done in it feels like 15 minutes to me. She's like, and done. Like, so in our family, guess who pays the bills? Vicki does. There's some trust there. There's like some trust happening. But I do trust Vicki. And if there's ever a time, I think we had like our insurance, our Geico bill was like hardly anything this month. I think this was one of those months where it's like they gave a rebate and a bip and a boop and a renewal thing. And what was usually like, $500? Some guy was like $25, $35. And all of a sudden there was this like, there's some extra cash. Well, Vicki's like, okay, hey, this happened. Here's what I think. What do you think? It's exactly the way the conversation went. I'd like to do something with that, and I'd like to put a little bit over there. What do you think? And I felt so loved. I felt so covered. I felt so included in that. And also like in our yearly kind of budget, like that's something we do together because I actually am really good at that. And I love that. I hate doing the monthly thing. That's death to me. But I do need a voice in the big picture. And so I bring that up because we were raised kind of in an old school sort of, the husband takes care of the finances. And if that's your jam, that's great. It works best for Vicki to actually do the bill paying in this little team here. It works way better.
So we went through everything with that. Like we did it together. We'd sit down and do it together in the early days. And we didn't have a budget in the early days because we believed this lie that if you didn't have any money, you didn't need a budget. Lie. We can have another session on that. No matter how much money you have, you should have a budget. It's a wonderful thing. And now we sit down once or twice a year. Carl would do it more. He likes the vision casting. And so we sit down, we do our budget, we get it all done on a spreadsheet. And then I'm the one that initiates. Most everything is done automatically now, so there isn't a whole lot. But so we do it together. If there's a bump in our budget, like this past month with our Geico insurance, then it's like, okay, what are we going to do with this budgeted money? Let's do something. Do we want to save it? Do we want to do this? Do we want to do that? And we decided that together. But finances can absolutely come in between. I think hiding finances can come in between. So that's another thing that can come in between that's kind of internal, but still can be an issue. I think really good friends can come in between your relationship. So if you're sharing more with your really good friend than you're sharing with your spouse, we probably need to have a conversation about that. Why is that? What is this really good friend giving you that your spouse isn't giving you? Why are you leaning there? Because it's you're withholding something from your spouse and giving it to another person. So what is that? I'm sure there are other things.
I mean, it could be hobbies,
Hobbies, yeah. Like I'm going golfing.
Anything
Well, I'm not going golfing, but a person could go golfing like more than they're spending time with their family. Like that hobby could come right in between. And it's different when it's, hey, I'm going to go do this thing. Are we good with that? Like, are we in agreement with that? That's a totally different thing than, see ya, I'm going to go do this thing. It's a totally different thing, totally different vibe, right?
Yeah. I have to say this. I have to tell you this one story. It's a true story, unlike all the others. This one is a true story. I got into sailing a couple years ago. There's a lake out here. I mean, we're not near the ocean at all, but we do have a lake, and I love it. I mean, anyway, there's a story behind it, but there's something about just being borne along by the wind that really spoke to me. And so I started getting into it. And, every now and then you go on Craigslist and you check the sailboat, boom. And there's this really cool, it's called a pocket cruiser. Any sailors out there, you know what I'm talking about. It's kind of a little sailboat. It was green. It was really cool looking. I really liked it. And I showed it to Vicki. She was like, oh my gosh, that is so cute. How much is it? I'm like, it's like $5,000. She's like, she started figuring out a way to get the sailboat. Like she started partnering with this dream that I had. What it wasn't was, I'm going to go get me a sailboat woman and I wear the britches in this house and doodly do. It wasn't that at all. It was the opposite. It was how can I partner with the dream that you have? We didn't get the boat, and that's fine. They say the two best days in a boat owner's life are the day he bought the boat and the day they sell the boat. But we didn't get the boat. But I felt so loved and championed by Vicki because she was like saying, we can do this. We'll figure it out. All right.
Yeah. So in all of these things, I hope like in the 4 weeks that we've been together, the most important thing, or like maybe two, I know there can't be two, but we'll say number one and number two is the importance of being turned toward one another. This is what is going to allow things to come from outside, things to come even from inside, but keep you together. The second thing is good relationships are not based on the absence of conflict, but on the willingness to resolve any conflict. That's that pressure. That's that, in a good sense, that thing that is pushing you together because God honors this. He honors the union.